Our morning mover shares of AMD up more than 2% in the pre-market after Truist upgraded the stock to a buy and boosted its price target to 213 from 173. The firm says industry contacts are turning more constructive on AMD's data center and AI positioning, with hyperscale customers now engaging as true partners as opposed to just using AMD as a price check against Nvidia. Truist sees comparisons to AMD's server CPU growth and expects the company to capture a sustainable 10% GPU market share over time. Time now for Options Corner. Joining us to take a deeper look at AMD is Rick Ducat, lead market technician here on Schwab Network. All right, Rick, let's talk about the trends on this chart because AMD, look, has been an outperformer this year.
For sure. I mean, a big turnaround for AMD. Year-to-date chart, you can see everything is kind of flip-flopped. AMD was doing the worst here during that tariff news cycle. Now it's doing the best relative to the SMH, Semiconductor Index, XLK Tech Index, and the S&P. But if you were to look at a 5-year chart, though, it's kind of a different picture here. AMD is actually kind of the laggard behind its technology peers here. So the time frame always makes a difference. This is one of those stocks that was so, there was so much buzz about it, but it kind of fizzled out here. Now we're still trying to reestablish some footing here. But if we were to look at our price chart here, 1 year, 1 day candle chart, you can see that price had a strong rally off of those tariff news lows there. It culminated all the way up here, just shy of that 190 area here. But if you were to backtrack, 174, our red line here, represents an old set of highs that price struggled to break above. We did make a new higher high during our second attempt, but if you were to look downward here, the RSI showed bearish divergence. Price made new closing highs. RSI was actually trending downward here. Now we're seeing RSI fall below that 50 midline, so momentum is starting to wane here toward the bearish side. We can also see, if we were to zoom in a little bit on our 1 year chart, that the 159 area, our green line here, matches up with a volume node as well as some recent lows. We can also see that our red line is where the volume starts to really drop off near 174, 175. That also is pretty close to our +2 standard deviation channel, so some potential resistance could be found there as well. If we were to also look at the expected move, September 19th, looking ahead here, about a 9.5% move here based on our mark price of about 168 in yellow there. So a lot could happen here, but notice that the expected move kind of tops out around that same high point as well. So a lot of potential resistance to clear for the bulls.
A lot of potential resistance to clear for the bulls. That's our Rick Ducat. All right, now take us through an example trade. We've got Tom White, senior options contributor. All right, Tom, so what's the approach for an example trade when you think about this upgrade and even the recent action that we've seen in AMD?
Well, I think you still have to look to Nvidia and their earnings after the close on Wednesday. That's going to be a big catalyst, not only for Nvidia stock, the chip space in sector in general and tech in general. So that might add some additional volatility to AMD, even though it got upgraded today, announced a collaboration with IBM today. So some good news. That's why the stock's popping up near 168 bucks ahead of the open. But watch what you wish for, because Nvidia comes out, disappoints. It's probably going to drag down that entire sector, AMD included. And then if the stock pops, it actually might help AMD also to the upside. So I looked at a strategy that gives myself a little bit of cushion to the downside. It's a neutral to bullish type strategy, taking advantage of probabilities at this point. So going out to the September 19th monthly option, so 24 days to expiration on this example trade. We're going to just sell an out of the money, neutral to bullish put vertical. September 19th, 3.5 weeks to expiration, sell the 160 put. That's about $8 out of the money to the downside from the current share price. Looks like it's going to open up about 168. And then against it, because we want to stay risk defined, anything can happen, by the 150 strike put. So a short $10 wide neutral to bullish put vertical. You're going to collect roughly about a 250 credit on that if the stock opens up right about here. And that takes your break even on this. If you collect that 250, that's what you can make, $250 per spread. Takes your break even down to 157.50. That's nearly 6% below where the stock's going to open up, around 168. And I mentioned this is taking advantage of higher probabilities of success, right? AMD can fall but as long as it remains above 160, so you can be wrong in this trade, as long as it remains above 160 or that break even at 157.50, you can be profitable on this trade. You've got a probability of that short 160 strike finishing out of the money at expiration over the next 3.5 weeks of nearly 7% with the stock at these current levels. So in a baseball analogy, I like to kind of look at it that way. You're trying to hit singles and doubles. You're not trying to swing for the fences on this one. You can be profitable in 3 out of 4 scenarios if the stock goes higher, stays where it is, or even goes lower, as I mentioned, but remains above 157.50 to the downside. So using those probabilities, just due to the fact that, hey, there's a lot of good news on AMD, but at the same time, you got to watch Nvidia earnings for direction for this stock too.
Tom, I thought you were about to lose me when you said you have to use a baseball analogy. Singles and doubles, I understand. If you were going beyond that, I was going to be RBIs, whatever. I was going to be completely lost, Tom. All right, so it's a put vertical example trade there for AMD. And as you mentioned, of course, you've got to potentially watch out for the impact off the back of Nvidia's earnings, which it does feel like the market is in wait-and-see mode ahead of those results due this week. All right, Tom, thank you. That's a put vertical example trade there for AMD.